And good afternoon and probably good evening to some of you. My name is Jim Warren with Anderson Vacations, and I'd like to welcome you to our presentation today. This is going to be a little bit unique compared to what we've done in the past, where we have focused primarily on destinations. We had kind of a request to take a look at how a tour is actually put together, how we put our tours together. And I've put together some thoughts here that certainly aren't the perfect way of doing it, but it's the way I've been doing it for years, and I hope some of these ideas will be of value to you. I should tell you that this will probably be a half an hour presentation or so. There will be a period at the end for questions, and I'd be delighted to answer any of them as we move forward. So first, a little about who Anderson Vacations is. We feel we are the premier FIT custom group and escorted group operator based for not only Canada, but also good portions of the US and South Pacific, meaning Australia, New Zealand, and South Pacific Islands. We've been in business for over 30 years, and we're based in Calgary, Alberta, and we really do consider ourselves to be the experts for Canadian product, from what we call sea to sea to sea. We're getting up into the Arctic. And we also like to point out that we focus on not only the unique product, but also standard programs that are good for big regular groups. And we also like to point out that we are focused on trying to become one of the best sustainable tour operators. And for those of you who are familiar with various things going on in Canada, we also are part of the reconciliation process in Canada and are delighted to be a reconciliation partner. So I think when you put a tour together, it's kind of like being an architect, when you're starting to build a new building or a giant church or something like that. You have to have a bunch of things in mind. And first of all, is the vision followed by a plan. Then you get down to the nitty gritty and turn over some soil for the build. Then you have to turn around and market it, because you may not have actually had a buyer in mind at the time. And then obviously the big key is, how does it all work? How does it fit into the community? And in our case, how does it fit into the travel community? And then obviously the last step, and it's an ongoing step, not only for if you're building, but also for a tour, is the evaluation and what you do to follow up on it. So what I've done is I've taken one of our tours. This is probably one of my favorite tours. And I've incorporated what we're going to talk about into this tour. I picked this particular tour because it has a whole bunch of different components in it. When we sell this tour, it's really kind of a tour that you can say there's three tours in one. There's a component in the Rocky Mountains, which is the first 4 days. Then we take a 2-day trip on Via Rail across the northern part of British Columbia. And then we take a tour down, a full-day trip down the Inside Passage, beautiful trip, and then travel our way down Vancouver Island, ending up in Vancouver. So the components of this are many, and it's a program that we have had for some time, but I give you a little better idea of how this trip runs, just so when I get into the details, you can see the complexity of it. We started off in Banff, usually arriving in Calgary. We work our way up through the Canadian Rockies, Banff, Lake Louise, the Columbia Icefields, and Jasper, which is the Rocky Mountain component of it, with lots of attractions, different hotels, and that sort of thing. Then we get on a train for 2 days and go across the northern part of British Columbia. And it has its own components that are challenging, which I'll mention as we go along. We overnight in a place called Prince Rupert for 2 days. You can see it's just at the southern tip of the Alaska Panhandle. Then we get on a beautiful government ferry and work our way down through the Inside Passage, finally coming down by coach all the way from the top end of the island, 300 miles down to the beautiful city of Victoria, and then finally ending the tour in Vancouver. So it has an amazing number of components to it, and it's a program that I particularly like. Now, I've mentioned that putting a tour like this together is kind of like being an architect, in that you have to have a vision of what you want to do. And the vision quite often comes from different places. In my case, this vision came from a tour that I did as a tour director probably 40 years ago when I was going to university. It was components of this tour that I loved. And I always wanted to kind of put them together and see how we could mesh them all into a beautiful program. Sometimes the vision may become just as a result of a client saying, I'd really like to do a tour in this area. Give me an idea of what we can do. Maybe they offer a budget. Maybe they offer a little bit of information on who the group is, or what time of the year they'd like to do it. Or it may be as a result of some pressure you're getting from a competitor. You look at this itinerary, you look at something they're doing and say, we should have that. We should be competitive with it. So there's lots of reasons that the vision comes. And once you get the vision, you need to start taking into consideration some of the key areas. I've particularly just focused on this trip and say, okay, well, once I got the idea of what I wanted to do, I looked at the general tour areas of interest. In this case, the first 4 days being the Canadian Rockies, Calgary, Banff, Lake Louise, Jasper, and everything in between, along with the routing that would take us to the West Coast, and then down the Inside Passage to Vancouver Island, and then eventually ending up in Victoria and Vancouver. So that's kind of the building site. Those are blocks that you would take and say, okay, those are the starting points. Those are the places we have to include, and now what we build around it. I always like to try and visualize a tour, and sometimes that's can be done in lots of ways. If you are familiar with the territory, it's a whole lot easier. If you take a look at the pictures on the left, it's pretty easy to visualize these. That happens to be Moraine Lake. You see at the bottom, beautiful Valley of the Ten Peaks. And up top, Mount Robson, which is up in the northern part by Jasper and one of our Via Rail trains. So I always try to get a feel of what it would be like to be going through those areas. How much time is it going to take? I can drive through them and be done with it in a day. Or is it a time that really I should be, this is amazing scenery. It's a once in a lifetime tour for a lot of people. We don't want to rush it. So visualizing it and trying to find a good mix is always a great way to do it. And one of the ways to visualize it, if you've never been there, is to research it. And I have that down at the bottom. But our DMOs, which are the industry specialists that are like the tourism bureaus of the province or the state or the individual cities, they can provide you with a tremendous amount of information. Sometimes they can have great videos, which are really good, not only for research, but also for providing an excitement about the trip and giving you a better idea of what you're actually putting together. I've also listed at the bottom here clients and groups, and they probably should be at the top of the list because obviously you really want to take a look at who the client is. What's the age group? Do they have some specific interests? Are they birders? Do they love animals? Are they more interested in geology or history? Do they have a very specific thing? We've done botanical garden tours. We've done tours that focus on authors and history, and that's governing feature in terms of how you put this together. Also, it's a good idea to have a rough idea of the age group and their mobility. A lot of these places that we put together, you have to be a bit careful about how detailed you make that adventure. And you need to make sure that you're always dealing with things that the majority of the group can do. Also, the size of the group. We put together full-size motor coach tours that carry usually 35 to 40 people. We like to do them smaller than that so that they're in a big coach, but have lots of access to the attractions and lots of comfort on the coach. We also like to do smaller groups that maybe use mini coaches and give us availability to get into some of the hidden gems that the big coaches can't get into. And generally, the smaller coaches, we can also provide better opportunities for people that want more individual time, if they want to do some hiking or kayaking or things like that. We also put a lot of programs together for independent travelers. I think, the travel agents in the group, you refer to them as FITs, but these are custom built itinerary programs. They may be fly drives where people are driving the program, or they may be programs that we can put together and use things like trains and ships and scheduled motor coach services. So those are all things you need to take a look at as you're putting this various components together. So the next part is to have a plan. These two kind of interface, but this is kind of the blueprint of the itinerary. And this is where you should dig down into the research for your potential routes, see if there's different routes that can be taken. For example, not on this tour, but in the Canadian Rockies, there's a back road that comes out of a place near Banff that goes down into the southern part of Alberta. It's probably one of the least used roads in the province, but probably one of the most beautiful roads that you can imagine. And we like to take some of these back roads, but you need to check them out first to make sure that you have the right availability of attractions and meals and stops along the way to make sure that your clients are comfortable. So along with that plan, there's a great need to make sure that as you're looking at all the options, that you're also dealing with all the sort of things that can come along as sidebars and catch you a little bit at the end. And these are things like insurance and operating licenses and the ability, the liability of taking people into places that may be a little more adventuresome. This guy on the right, he could be a bit of a liability, but he's also a great attraction. So the structure is really about them putting together a day-to-day routine. And that is something that really requires a lot of knowledge and research. You can easily look at Google or at all the various maps that are available, and you can find that, yes, I could go from A to B in only 3 hours. The track is that sometimes those 3 hours really could require as much as 2 days if you want to do all the things along the way. And that's really the real part of putting a tour together, is making sure that you're picking the good things, the things that will be positive with the clients, but also making sure that you're not just jamming them in to make sure you get them all included. For those of us that put tours together for adults over the age of 50, one of the key things is to make sure that you have your stops for meals and your comfort stops, i.e. restrooms. These are very key items on the tour, especially for seniors. And it's a very important part of making sure that you don't put people at discomfort along the way just to get from A to B. Another part of it really is, and the huge part of it, is accommodation. You have to decide ahead of time, not only by researching to see what's available, but talking about the budget that you would have. If your client has said, I need to do this tour, I need to have it within a certain budget, then you have to work within that, not only in looking at hotels, but also probably in the number of attractions you use, the kind of meals you provide, the number of meals you provide, and the number of hours you're going to put into the day, which then reflects back on how long you need that transportation for. Another area to be very careful with is attractions and events. The Canadian Rockies, for example, a lot of the major attractions like the Icefield Parkway and the ice glacier rides and that sort of thing are seasonal. Now, the seasons can be mid-May right through till mid-October, or they can be varied depending on the weather. Parts of this that we had to take a really good look at, the train. Yes, it runs all year round, but some of the trains, if you're using somebody like Rocky Mountaineer on a trip, only run seasonally. And the same with things like the ferries. So also you have to look at a combination of things you need for pricing in, but also purchasing park passes, specific licenses like you need in a lot of the US parks, and even road access. So they're components of a structure list that really need to be watched carefully. So then you get to the point of, actually building this. And to me, it's like putting together a really good travel jigsaw puzzle. Each of the pieces, the accommodation, tractions, transportation, have to synchronize. You can put them all together, but lots of times you'll find they don't necessarily fit in the way that you're hoping they will. So I always like to, I do, a lot of you can do this on computer, I'm sure, but when I put tours together, I have a big white sheet that I put on the wall, and I kind of put it together like it's a bit of a murder mystery to make sure that all of the components and the timing fit together. So some of those really important things that need to be looked at, and I'll refer back to the tour that we started with as we go along here. Nowadays, probably one of the biggest challenges we're facing is making sure that we have our contract requirements in place. Hotels are getting much more challenging to work with. You'll find that a lot of hotels are now putting attrition clauses into the contracts, which can be very devastating if your group doesn't materialize. Deposits, rooming lists, and final payments all need to be really well looked after, because if you miss any of those and you happen to be traveling in a very busy season in a very busy destination and you screw up on one of those things, it can cause a lot of challenges for you. I think another thing we have to look at is resort fees. They're popping up on hotels all over the place. And sometimes when you're doing the costing of a tour, if you don't catch those early, they can change that margin on your tour quite quickly, and to a certain extent can add a lot to the product cost, at least. The other thing is how you deal with gratuities. More and more nowadays, I find, at least from groups, they're asking to have those gratuities included. So it's really good to make sure you know what a standard gratuity is, how you want the company to be seen by the people that you're paying, restaurants, the bellman, the front door people at the hotels, and all of the places where gratuities may be paid. It's always good to have a good idea of how your company is going to be perceived by those people, because they're very important to the smooth operation of how the tour runs. Transportation has become a challenge. We've all seen big increases in the cost of all forms of transportation, specifically charter bus companies. But when we're looking at who's going to carry these programs, whether it's a full-size motor coach or whether we're going to use a smaller coach, maybe with a driver guide, it is so important to make sure you do your homework on the history, the financial stability, the licensing, the insurance, and the driver training that takes place. I can tell you from personal experience that we have seen tours that have run perfectly, but with the exception of the driver or the reliability of the coach, and they can cause very big problems. That's a real key item when you're looking at budgeting. It's tempting sometimes to take that lowest bid, but it's always very, very important to make sure you check to see, is that coach licensed? Does the driver have experience? Are they able to go from province to province or state to state without different licenses? And if they do they have that? We've seen situations where in the US, there are different rules about motor coaches moving from state to state. Similarly, if you bring a US coach into Canada, you have to have different licensing for it. So those are all things to know, because when you come down to the actual operation of the tour, they can create you some big last minute headaches. Another one that's really important to look at, and on this particular tour, you notice that we have a 2-day train trip that meshes into a 1-day trip on a down the inside passage. This particular trip is unique in that the train runs 3 days a week, same 3 days all the time, but the boat, or the ferry that runs on every other day. So the timing of the connections in a whole month, it actually works out that these two only meet um, 3 times in a month that would enable us to have the kind of itinerary we want. So really, really important to look at those schedules. Always, I would always suggest everything be double checked, that you have two sets of eyes look at them, because sometimes it's so easy to mistake a month, mistake a day, and all of a sudden you have a real challenging with how you're setting that tour up. Attractions are also something that really need to be looked at. A lot of the attractions that we use are seasonal, but the seasons are big. They go from usually the middle of May right through till the end of October. However, some of them do close earlier than others, and there's nothing more embarrassing than to price in a tour, get it accepted a year in advance or down the road, only to find that you missed out on the timing of an event. The other thing is accessibility in the key areas. Again, like we're looking at in the Rockies, we have to go after those timings that we want our group to be there well in advance, like 6 months in advance. If you don't do it in time, quite often you'll end up getting times that you didn't really want, and you'll have to change the whole routing of your itinerary to fit the attraction. Meals have become a challenge. If you're looking at bigger groups, like maybe 35 to 40 people, since COVID, a lot of attractions and or a lot of restaurants in particular, have stopped serving groups because they don't have the staffing available. Some of them have come up with different ideas, saying, we have to have everybody in before 5 o'clock. Others have said we'll only take 20 people. There are lots of opportunities with this, such as dine-arounds. Some groups we've seen are giving everybody a credit card voucher and just say, we'll set up the appointment or the reservation, then you get a chance to do a dine-around. But whatever you do, you've got to make sure you don't leave these till the last minute, because, again, it can have a big effect on how you do the tour. And also, you need to get involved in how this fits into your budget. And also making a point that if you're including a lot of meals, you change those menus around so that you're not serving chicken every night. And I guess the other part is, nowadays people have so many food allergies and food preferences that it's really important to make sure your restaurants can deal with those things ahead of time rather than finding out at the last minute. The bottom person on this is the tour manager, and by far this is the key to so many tours. Having a tour manager who not only is familiar with how your company functions, how you want your tours to be operated, but also is experienced in not only the areas, but in dealing with people. It's hard to find professional tour directors now who have lots of experience. So the other part of that is that you should have a very good training program available in case you have to start using some tour directors who may come to you with professional status, but not necessarily with the knowledge you want them to have of how you like to run a tour, or even specifically the itinerary. So that is, if you're going to repeat a tour, definitely have that tour manager's manual well in advance so that you can bring that tour manager in for either proper training or upgrading along the way. So now we've got the tour together. The marketing of it is quite uniquely different depending on who the client is. If it's a custom tour, which our company does a lot of custom tours, and we do it for group leaders, we do it for other tour operators, Generally, it will be promoted by the final purchaser of the trip, the tour operator or the group leader. So the marketing of that really is not directly in your hands, but quite often that person will come to you and say, can you provide us with a video? Can you provide us with images? Can you even provide us with a training program or a video that talks about the tour? These are really important items to have available, and they're also great as far as training your own staff and making them aware of the overall product you're putting together. If you're marketing these programs directly, you have some other options, and we'll kind of flip over to that, which is here. Um, First of all, I guess when you're looking at marketing directly to either consumer or marketing through professional travel agents who I believe we have online today, and first of all, that would be our preference is always to use a professional travel agent. Then we know we have to make sure that when we've put that program together, we've built in substantial opportunities for commission structure, or even offering that tour at a net rate if that travel agent decides they want to have a small group with us. We love to make sure that we have lots of material available for those people, whether it's a more direct introduction to the tour, perhaps even a personal zooming into the clients with a kind of a run through of the tour, or something that we've recorded, or even some videos. But anything visual is usually the biggest selling point for at least a product like we sell, where huge amount of what we're selling is visual. We also recommend and get involved directly in using social media, lots of different opportunities there. And a new partnership or new opportunity that's coming up are through travel influencers. And I don't have a lot of personal experience with this, but I've been noting at conferences and conventions that they've become a big part of promotion of travel. And my only knowledge is that you have to be very careful to make sure that the travel influencers you're working with are promoting your product and are positive about it. And you don't want it to go the other way. So it's always good to have a good relationship with people that you're working with. We also look at a lot of partnerships. A lot of the programs we do, we have partners that we've worked with for years, in some cases decades, who love our product and who enable us to be a silent partner for them as they promote a program we've put together for them. This is a huge part of our business and one that should be really looked at. So the key to making sure that everything goes as we planned is, in fact, the operation. I guess this is like the grand opening of the architect's new building. You know, all the shiny part of it is when that bus, that tour bus, or getting on the train or the ship, if that's the first day of the tour, it unfortunately or fortunately is quite often how people see the rest of the tour. So you want to make sure that all of your operations have really gone well. It's really imperative that all your departments be aware of how those tours operate. The operation of the tour needs to be well planned and well orchestrated, but it also needs to be a day-by-day operation. So whether it's done from the home office or whether it's the tour manager on the tour, that preparation for each day and for the probably at least 3 days in advance of each movement is critical. Things change dramatically. In the Rockies, we have forest fires. We have things that change the schedule of events. Sometimes it's something as simple as some wildlife that they are trying to protect in a certain area and close down a region for a few days or even the rest of the season. So these things need to be really carefully monitored, not just up to the point of the tour, but during the tour as well. And that tour manager needs to have 24-hour contact with the tour operations people, so that if things happen on the road, it can be resolved quickly and the professionalism of the tour manager and of the tour is kept intact. So an action plan of operations is imperative. And I'm going to go to the bottom of this list where we talk about crisis management. And I'm sure if you're a tour operator or travel agent on this line, you've all dealt with this. I came back from a conference recently where there were over 500 tour operators. And of the 500 tour operators, less than 20% of them actually had a crisis management system in place. And even if you're dealing with individuals traveling on an FIT or small groups, this is imperative that you have. Things like forest fires and bus mechanical operations, accidents, weather-related things are virtually unpredictable. And how they're handled, not only in terms of the group, but in terms of the reputation of the company and ultimately liability, are really important. And we could do a whole seminar on crisis management, but I would just say that if you don't have a crisis management program in place, you need to do it. And I'd be quite happy to share the one that we have with our company if anybody wants to contact me later. It's also really important that that tour manager be constantly evaluating the guest satisfaction on the daily basis. Most tour operators or most tour managers will sit up in the front of the coach and do a good job, but lots of times they miss the things that are going on by not being personally connected with the group. And to me, that's the biggest part of what happens on a day-to-day operation, is that not only should that tour manager be looking ahead to the next day and the day after, but they should be watching very carefully to make sure that everybody on that coach or on the train or on the ship are getting the maximum amount of enjoyment out of the trip. It's hard to do, but it's also part probably of that second big plan that you should have, which is your training plan for your tour director or whoever is going to be in charge of that tour. Sometimes it's step-on guides that are just doing day-to-day, but it is important that we always get that feedback. So the tour has run hopefully successfully. All the component parts worked, and everybody's sitting back feeling very happy about it. But that's really where I think a lot of the hard work needs to start again. Everybody needs to evaluate what that tour went like. Even if the tour director comes back and says it was the best tour ever, we need to make sure that we check out and see what were the challenges. Were there some? Probably there were some that the tour director hopefully happened well and may not even mention it in a report. But we need to make sure that if you're going to do that tour again, that you have an opportunity to correct it, make it right, make it even better. Everybody's in the business to make a profit. And so one of the key items is to take a look at how that margin that you put in actually worked out. You know, what was your bottom line? It's very easy to look at a tour and think it was successful because everybody loved it. But if you ended up paying penalties on hotels or having to put out extra money for different meals or resolving problems financially, it can change that bottom line quite a bit. The other part is to take a look at the future. If this was a great itinerary, which the one I've used as an example has been very popular, we run it 2 or 3 times a year. And each time we run it, we look at a way, you know, what's changed. This is a tour that ultimately, as an itinerary, has been available for over 40 years. But there's been many changes over that 40 years. The train schedule, the roads that we use in various parts, the schedule of the ferry, the kind of accommodation available on the ferry. All of these things need to be looked upon and also explored, because lots of times they change. Is there a new train coming in? Is there a new system? Have they dropped, for example, on the train that we're taking, it's a 2-day trip, and they've dropped all meal service on that train. So we needed to step up and make sure we can provide that meal service in various ways for our clients. And if we weren't well aware of that, it could become a real challenge for us. I guess the final part is to look at how you can augment that trip and make it even better. This particular trip, for example, we can put it together. We have a group that's doing it this year where we changed the dates so that we could put the Calgary Stampede in at the beginning. This is a great 2 or 3 day adventure in Calgary, one of the world's largest rodeos, and it's a great way to start a tour, and it's a great addition to this trip. Or we could look down the road and say, when we come down Vancouver Island, there's some great whale watching opportunities. What if we added an extra day to that tour and made it a nature focus? The nature walk you see on the right is an area up in the northern part of Vancouver Island. And if you combine that maybe with the whale watching, you've changed the complexity of the tour and perhaps made it a little more interesting. So these are all part of the evaluations that you should look at, and I'm sure there's many more that I haven't put in here, but I just wanted to kind of touch base on the basics of when our company puts a tour together, the things that we look at, the sequence of them, and how they work. This particular trip we've run successfully for over 30 years. It's been modified many times, but it's still one of those tours that I like to look at because it offers so many alternatives and it has a great satisfaction level. So ultimately, that's what we're looking at. I have reached the end of the presentation. I would invite any questions. This is a picture of Lake Louise, and most of you probably heard of Lake Louise up in the Canadian Rockies, and part of our team. We like to take our team around to the various destinations that we have to make sure they become the experts. And I have a couple of members of our team, Iris and Tierra, are with us today. I really appreciate all their assistance with this. And Iris, I don't know if you have any questions that have come through.
Hi, Jim. Yes, we do have a few questions, and I can see it in the QR question box. So the first one is from Deborah. Thank you so much for joining us today. What is the maximum of passengers in a small coach with a driver?
It's a good question. Small coaches are hard to find right now with driver guides. We work with a company in the Canadian Rockies where the maximum would be 10 passengers, 10 or 11 passengers comfortably. There are companies that we can work with that the driver guide would be probably a maximum. It would be a bigger coach. The 10 passenger are more like a large van, and the bigger coaches would be 15 to 20 passengers. Anything over that, you really need to go to a full-size coach.
Okay, great. And also Deborah has another question. Is a home or a villa with a chef for a small group, maximum 10 people, be something that can be done with Anderson Vacation?
The word would be can be done. The answer probably yes. The answer, have we done it? No. So it would require us to go and follow all those steps that I just outlined to you. There are opportunities for that. I think it's not something we've investigated thoroughly, but if it's an idea you have and you'd like us to check it out, I'd love to look at it.
I think we're just having a technical difficulty. Jim, I think his connection just went out, so we can just wait for him to rejoin. We also have another question that from Deborah saying, do you use or recommend a satisfaction survey at the end of the tour? And that is something currently that we do use. So when we have a direct client group, we will actually send them out a survey so they can rate different portions of the tour and the service and the accommodations, and they can comment on their experiences. When we do work with travel advisors, we ask them to kind of survey the clients on behalf of us so we can also have that feedback, and we work on with you on getting the feedback. So we definitely recommend using a satisfaction survey at the end of the tour so you can have an idea on what did work and what could be improved for the next time. We also have another question from Alvaro Terra. Thank you for joining. That is any possibility to have services in Portuguese and or Spanish? That is definitely a possibility. We have also done tours in French. It's depending on if we can connect with the right tour guide and have someone that can cater to the language of the group. So that is absolutely a possibility with us, and you can inquire with us for more information there. Children age restrictions is another question we have. It's depending on the activities that the group is doing. So um, definitely for some groups, depending on what there is some age restrictions. Um, but we have had like more between the ages of like 8 to 10, around that age range, and just yeah, that really is coming down to what is actually taking place on the tour. So that is something we can work with you on with as well. And then yeah, I think those are all the questions that we have. If you want to submit any other questions, we can do that now. We also have a question from Megan that says, what percentage deposit do you have to put down for a custom group trip? We'll reach out directly to you, Megan, about that. It definitely depends on um, the group, and I think the group size. So that's something that we can inquire with you about specifically. Okay, we just want to thank everyone for joining today. I don't think Jim's connection is returning, so that's okay. Doesn't seem like we have any more questions either. I just want to let everyone know that we will be able to. Can you mute yourself?
Mhm.
Yeah, we will be sending everyone an email with the webinar recording. So we'll send that out to you after, and you can have this information and come back to the recording at any time. And we would just like to let you know that you can reach out to us at any time. We can help you with your small groups, with the custom groups. We also offer escorted departures too. We can help really just provide a great experience for your clients. We also do some FIT trips, so that's something we can help you with. So yeah, thank you so much to everyone for joining, and we will be sending you that email afterwards. So perfect, thank you.